For the last 4 years, the worst kept secret in political Washington, and certainly in Democratic circles, was this. The idea that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris liked one another, respected one another, and got along was always ridiculous. I made videos about this. I talked about it. I wrote about it, but the signs were always there that Joe Biden didn't think all that much of Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris thought that Joe Biden and the Bidens, Joe Biden, and his staff were constantly shunning her, giving her bad assignments, not helping her position to run for president. Well, that is now all broken out into the public eye, particularly over the last 48 hours. So Kamala Harris is writing a book called 107 Days. It is a memoir of the 107 days she was the Democratic presidential nominee in 2024. And in the first excerpt of that book, which came out in The Atlantic earlier this week, Harris writes that it was quote unquote recklessness for Joe Biden to run for a second term, and that he was too beholden to his ego and his own ambition, and the job was too important and the stakes were too high for an ego and ambition to get in the way of what was right for the party and the country. She also savaged Biden's staff. She said this, quote, "Their thinking was zero sum. If she's shining, he's dim. None of them grasped that if I did well, he did well. His team didn't get it." One more. "When the stories about Harris were unfair or inaccurate, the president's inner circle seemed fine with it. Indeed, it seemed as if they decided I should be knocked down a little bit more." As you might guess, those comments occasioned comments from Biden world pushing back on Harris. I'm going to get into those in 1 minute. Before I do that, I want to make a pitch to you. I want you to become a subscriber. 2 words: independent, authentic. Independent from big media, corporate media, independent from the 2 political parties. Just me bringing you news and analysis. Second, authentic. I'm always going to tell you what I think, my honest take. I'm never going to pull punches. I'm never going to do fan service. You may not always agree with me, but I hope you always respect me. Subscribe. Okay, so Harris basically says Biden was too old, shouldn't have run, put his ego and his ambition first. His team never supported me. They never really liked me, and they were fine with me being criticized. Well, here comes the pushback via Alex Thompson, who is one of the 2 people, along with Jake Tapper, who wrote the book about Joe Biden's demise and decline while in office. I'm just going to read you a few quotes. Here's one former Biden White House official. Quote, "Vice President Harris was simply not good at the job. She had basically zero substantive role in any of the administration's key work streams and instead would just dive bomb in for stilted photoshops that exposed how out of the depth she was." Here's another. Biden is, quote, "not the reason she struggled in office or tanked her 2019 presidential campaign or lost the 2024 campaign for that matter. The independent variable there is the vice president, not Biden or his aides." Yeah. Now, that's one aide, but I can tell you that this is indicative of a broader sentiment within both Biden world and Harris world. I noted this at the time, but I want to reiterate it. In May, Joe Biden, May 2025, went on The View. Has not really done many public appearances, but he went on The View, and he was not good in this interview. But he, as I wrote at the time, threw Kamala Harris under the bus on several occasions. First, he said he, quote, "wasn't surprised that she had lost." Second, he said that he would have won had he run. Then there is Hunter Biden, the son of the former president of the United States, who has basically said the Democratic Party screwed themselves by abandoning my dad when he would have won, and they did so for terrible reasons. Okay, so this is all in keeping with what we knew, what I tried to write about. Let's go back to go forward. Why was Kamala Harris chosen as vice president? Because Joe Biden, in a debate with Bernie Sanders, who at the time, this is pre-COVID, 2020 election, but pre-COVID, Sanders was seen as a legitimate challenge to Biden. Biden, to try to make the left happy, said that he would pick a woman and a black woman as his running mate. which narrowed his choices necessarily. If you say you're going to pick a white guy, it narrows your choices, black woman, white woman, whatever, black man. So he picks Harris, I think, for a couple reasons. One, she makes sense. She's a sitting senator from California. She had run for president, and she had a relationship, a professional relationship with his late son, Beau Biden. They had both been attorneys general, Beau in Delaware, Harris in California. But it was always a political marriage of convenience. Joe Biden did not have any significant relationship with Kamala Harris before he picked her. He had put himself in a box in terms of who he could pick. He had limited his options, and she seemed like the best option available to him. Plain and simple. They never really got along. His staff didn't think much of her. I would argue Biden himself didn't think much of her. One of the reasons, I am utterly convinced, one of the reasons that Biden kept running, decided to run for a second term, stayed in the race for as long as he did after that disastrous June 27th, 2024 debate, is because he did not think and does not think that Kamala Harris could have won the election. He never believed that. He always thought, now, some of that's about he didn't think Harris was a great candidate. Some of it he thinks the public was sexist and wasn't going to vote for a black woman. It's a little of a bunch of things, but he never really thought that she could step into his shoes. He thought he was the one indispensable figure, the one person who had beaten Donald Trump and could beat Donald Trump again. And as I pointed out in that interview in May 2025, Biden basically said that. I would have won, and I wasn't surprised that Harris lost. Harris, on the other hand, look, she took the job as any ambitious politician would because she knew that Biden was in his 80s and probably wouldn't serve 2 terms, but even if he did, would hand it off to her. Well, he wasn't interested in handing it off. He was interested in keeping it for himself. And that clearly rankled Harris. I don't think, however, this is all Joe Biden's fault. When that aide of Biden told Axios' Alex Thompson that she was not a good candidate or a good politician, I think that's true. I think all evidence that we have, 2019, her 2019 campaign, her campaign for Attorney General in California, her really uncontested campaign for Senate in California, she's never been good at convincing people who aren't already for her to be for her. She runs shoddy campaigns with family at the top of them. She is all over the place on message. She doesn't seem to have a core. Is she a liberal? Is she a moderate? Is she a pragmatist? Is she something else? She's been all of those things. So I don't think she's a particularly good candidate. And I don't think she was a particularly good president. Was a vice president. Was some of that because Biden undermined her and his people? Sure, of course. Was some of it because she's just not particularly talented? Also, yes. But again, I talked about this a lot, and people insisted they love each other. They get along great. That was never, ever the case. This was a political marriage of convenience from the start. Joe Biden never thought much of Kamala Harris, and Kamala Harris always thought that Joe Biden didn't give her the proper amount of respect and was not interested in pushing her and her political ambitions. Now that it's all out in public, we can all agree on it, but trust me, this was the worst kept secret in Washington for those 4 years. All right, everybody. A couple things. One, I hope you subscribe. As I said before, independent and authentic. I hope you like and comment on this video. Helps me get my content out to people who aren't already subscribers. Last thing, tell someone you know about what I'm doing here, what I'm building, why you think it's of value. That would be, subscribing is amazing. Getting 5 other people to subscribe, even more amazing. All right, everyone. Take care.